The rain fell like it had something to prove. It flooded the narrow streets, drummed against rusted tin roofs, and soaked everything. Please subscribe our channel A Story a Day, and drop your comment were from you watching our stories. Thank you. Touched, including Aarav, a thin 12-year-old boy standing alone under a flickering streetlight. His expensive jacket clung uselessly to his trembling body. His shoes, worth more than most people's monthly rent, were filled with icy water. He was lost. The driver was gone. The car was gone. And his phone, once fully charged, now showed a dead, black screen. Aarav hugged his arms tightly, teeth chattering, fighting the urge to cry. He had never been this afraid before. Not in his father's mansion. Not behind the guarded gates. Not even during his parents' endless arguments. Here, in the rain-soaked slum streets, fear felt different. Real. Across the road, Anaya balanced a plastic bucket on her hip as she hurried home. At 16, she was already used to exhaustion. Every morning she helped her mother clean houses in the wealthy neighborhood uphill. Every evening she cooked, washed, and studied by dim light, dreaming of a life she wasn't sure she'd ever reach. The rain slowed her steps. Then she saw him. A boy. Alone. Shaking. Her first instinct was to look away. In their world, noticing strangers often brought trouble. But something about the way he stood, small against the storm, eyes wide and glassy, made her stop. "Hey," Anaya called out, her voice gentle but cautious. "Are you okay?" Aarav didn't answer. His lips were turning pale blue. Anaya crossed the street, rain soaking her worn sandals. "You'll get sick standing here," she said, shrugging off her thin shawl and placing it around his shoulders without thinking. He flinched at first, then relaxed slightly at the warmth. I can't find my driver," he whispered. His voice cracked. "My dad's going to kill me." Anaya frowned. "Your dad won't kill you," she said firmly. "But the rain might." She grabbed his cold hand. It felt numb, lifeless. That scared her. "Come with me," she said. "My house is close. You can warm up." Aarav hesitated. He had been warned all his life not to trust strangers, especially poor ones. But the rain poured harder, and his legs felt weak. He nodded. Anaya led him through muddy lanes to a tiny shack with a leaking roof. Inside, her mother, Mira, looked up in shock. "Anaya, who is this?" "He's lost," Anaya said, "and freezing." Mira didn't ask questions. She rushed to light the stove and wrapped Aarav in a dry towel. As warmth slowly returned to his body. Aarav didn't know it yet, but this small, broken home would change his life forever. And Anaya had no idea the trembling boy she saved was the son of one of the most powerful billionaires in the country. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, destiny had quietly stepped through the door. The storm raged outside, but inside the tiny shack, the air slowly grew warm. Aarav sat on a low wooden stool, wrapped in a thick towel that smelled faintly of soap and firewood. His fingers curled tightly around a chipped metal cup as Mira poured steaming ginger tea into it. The warmth seeped into his hands, then his chest, melting the ice that fear had built inside him. "Drink slowly," Mira said kindly. "You're safe here." Safe. The word felt strange to Aarav. He had lived in a house with marble floors and private guards. Yet safety had never sounded like this, soft, patient, and spoken without expectation. Anaya knelt near the stove, stirring a pot of rice and lentils. Her clothes were still damp, but she didn't seem to notice. Every few seconds, she glanced at Aarav to make sure he was still conscious, still breathing easily. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Aarav," he replied after a pause. "Yours?" "Anaya." For a moment, they simply listened to the rain hammering against the roof, the water dripping steadily into a plastic bowl Mira had placed beneath a leak. Mira finally spoke. "Where do you live, Beta?" Aarav hesitated. He had been taught not to give details, not to trust, but something about the way Mira looked at him, concerned, not curious, made him answer. "Far," he said quietly. "I was in the car with my driver. We stopped because of traffic. I got out to look, and he drove away without me." Anaya's eyes widened. "Just left you?" He nodded, shame burning his cheeks. My father will fire him. Or worse. Mira sighed. Adults make mistakes too, she said softly. But a child shouldn't pay for them. She placed a plate of hot food in front of him. Aarav stared at it. It wasn't fancy, no silver cutlery, no imported ingredients, but the smell made his stomach twist with hunger. Go on, Anaya urged. Eat. The first bite made his eyes sting. He hadn't realized how hungry he was, or how long it had been since someone had cooked just to care for him. As he ate, Anaya noticed the cut on his knee, red and swollen beneath dried mud. You're hurt, she said. It's nothing, Aarav muttered, instinctively pulling away. Anaya gently caught his leg anyway, cleaning the wound with warm water. My mother says small wounds become big ones if you ignore them. Her hands were careful, practiced. Not once did she complain. Aarav watched her, confused. At home, servants did their work quickly, silently. No one looked at him like he mattered. Why are you helping me? He asked suddenly. Anaya paused. Because you needed it. That simple answer stayed with him. Outside, a black luxury SUV slowed near the slum entrance. Inside, a man in a tailored suit stared into the rain, his jaw tight with panic. Vikram Malhotra, one of the country's richest billionaires, had been searching for his son for hours. Vikram Malhotra had faced boardroom wars, hostile takeovers, and politicians who smiled while planning his downfall, but nothing compared to the terror clawing at his chest now. His son was missing. Rain streaked down the windows of the SUV as it crept through unfamiliar, narrow roads. The driver slowed repeatedly, forced to avoid flooded potholes and clusters of tin-roofed homes pressed tightly together, like they were holding each other up. Check every lane, Vikram ordered, his voice sharp but shaking beneath the control. Every corner. Yes, sir. Vikram leaned forward, scanning faces through the glass, vendors pulling carts, women hurrying children indoors, stray dogs shivering under shop awnings. His heart dropped with every passing second. Aarav had never been alone like this. Vikram knew that. He had raised his son behind gates and guards, believing money could protect him from the world's cruelty. Tonight, that illusion was cracking. Inside the shack, Aarav slept curled on a thin mattress, exhaustion finally winning. His breathing had steadied, color slowly returning to his face. Anaya sat beside him, her schoolbook open but unread. She watched the boy's chest rise and fall, relieved. He has a fever, Mira whispered, touching Aarav's forehead. But it's breaking. Anaya nodded. I'll stay awake. Mira smiled tiredly. You always do. Outside, a sudden beam of bright headlights sliced through the rain, flooding the narrow lane with white light. Anaya stiffened. Cars like that never came here. She stepped outside cautiously. The SUV idled near the entrance, its engine humming softly but powerfully. A tall man stepped out, shielding his face from the rain. Even soaked, his suit looked expensive. Everything about him screamed authority. Have you seen a boy? Vikram asked, desperation slipping into his voice. 12 years old, wearing a dark jacket. Anaya's heart raced. Was he dangerous? A police officer? Someone angry? He's asleep, she said carefully. He was freezing. Vikram froze. You found him? Anaya nodded. He needed help. Vikram exhaled sharply, relief almost knocking him to his knees. May I see him? Mira appeared behind Anaya, protective but calm. She studied the man's eyes, sharp, yes, but filled with fear, not threat. Come in, Mira said. Vikram stepped into the shack, ducking under the low doorway. His gaze landed on Aarav instantly. Seeing his son safe, wrapped in a blanket, broke something inside him. He knelt beside the mattress, brushing damp hair from Aarav's forehead with trembling fingers. I'm here, he whispered. Aarav stirred, eyelids fluttering. Dad. Vikram pulled him into his arms, holding him like he might disappear again. Tears mixed with rain on Vikram's face, tears he never allowed himself to shed. He looked up at Anaya and Mira. You saved my son. Anaya shook her head. We just didn't leave him. Vikram didn't yet know that this small act of kindness would change. the debt no money could repay. The rain softened to a whisper, as if the storm itself was finally listening. Vikram Malhotra remained kneeling beside his son, his arms wrapped tightly around Aarav. For the first time that night, his heartbeat slowed. The fear that had been suffocating him loosened its grip, replaced by something heavier, gratitude. He stood slowly, straightening his soaked suit, and turned toward Mira and Anaya. "Thank you," he said, his voice steady but thick. "You saved my son's life." Mira shook her head gently. Any mother would do the same. Vikram glanced around the shack, the cracked walls, the leaking roof, the single bulb hanging from a wire. He had donated millions to charities, funded schools, sponsored hospitals. Yet none of that felt as real as this moment. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a thick bundle of cash. "Please," he said, extending it toward Mira. "For what you did." Anaya stiffened. Mira didn't take the money. We didn't help him for payment. Vikram paused, surprised. People never refused him. Not like this. "I insist," he said, lowering the bundle onto the table. "At least let me help you." Mira met his gaze. "Help isn't always money, sir." The words struck Vikram harder than the storm ever could. Anaya spoke quietly. He was scared. "We just stayed." Vikram looked at her properly now, her worn clothes, her tired eyes that still held kindness. She was young, far too young to carry such responsibility. "What's your name?" he asked. "Anaya." "And you?" He asked Mira. "Mira. I work as a maid." Vikram nodded slowly, absorbing that. His company employed thousands of domestic workers across the city. How many Miras had he never truly seen? Aarav stirred again, sitting up slightly. "Dad, she fixed my knee," he said, pointing at Anaya. "And she gave me food." Vikram's chest tightened. "Thank you," he said again, this time to Anaya. "You were very brave." Anaya looked down. "I was just being human." Those words echoed in Vikram's mind. Outside, Vikram's security team waited anxiously. One of them stepped closer. "Sir, we should go. The doctor is waiting." Vikram nodded. He turned back to Mira. "I won't forget this," he said firmly. "I promise." Mira smiled faintly. "Just take care of your son." As Vikram carried Aarav toward the door, Aarav twisted around. "Anaya." "Yes." "Will I see you again?" Anaya hesitated. "I don't know." Vikram paused at the doorway. "You will," he said quietly. As the SUV disappeared into the rain, Anaya felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest, not hope exactly, but the sense that life had just shifted, ever so slightly. And far away, a billionaire sat beside his sleeping son, realizing that tonight, money had been powerless. Two worlds, one promise. Morning arrived slowly, as if the sun itself was unsure whether it belonged over a place like this. Anaya woke before dawn, the events of the night replaying in her mind. The rain had stopped, leaving the narrow lane slick with mud and silence. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been a dream, the lost boy, the powerful man, the promise whispered in the doorway. But the folded towel Aarav had used lay neatly on the stool. It had been real. Mira stirred beside the stove, already preparing tea before heading out to work. "You didn't sleep much," she said softly. Anaya shook her head. "I keep thinking about him. About his father." Mira smiled sadly. People like that live in a different world. Anaya nodded, but something inside her disagreed. Last night, she hadn't seen a billionaire. She had seen a frightened father. Across the city, Aarav lay in a massive bed surrounded by white curtains. Doctors hovered quietly, checking his temperature, nodding in relief. He was fine. Just a mild fever. Just a scare. But Vikram Malhotra hadn't slept. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, looking down at a city that bowed to his name. Yet his thoughts were far from contracts and stock prices. Anaya's words echoed in his head. "I was just being human." When Aarav finally woke fully, he looked around, confused. "Dad." Vikram turned instantly. "I'm here." Aarav sat up. "Did we leave?" "Yes. You're home." Aarav frowned. "What about Anaya?" And her mother. Vikram approached the bed. They're safe. That house. It was small, Aarav said thoughtfully, but it felt warm. Vikram swallowed. Sometimes warmth doesn't come from walls. Aarav looked at his father seriously. You said I'd see her again. Vikram held his son's gaze. He had made that promise without thinking. Now it felt heavier than any deal he had ever signed. I meant it, he said. Later that day, Vikram summoned his assistant. Find them, he ordered. The woman named Mira. Her daughter, Anaya. The assistant hesitated. Sir, may I ask why? Vikram's voice hardened, not with anger, but resolve. Because they reminded me of something I forgot. Meanwhile, Anaya returned to school, her uniform still damp at the hem. As she sat in class, numbers and words blurred together. Her classmates laughed, complained, planned futures that felt impossibly far away. During lunch, a friend whispered, You look distracted. Anaya smiled faintly. Just tired. But deep inside, she felt a pull, like two invisible threads, tying her small world to a much larger one. That evening, as Anaya helped her mother wash dishes, a black car slowed at the end of the lane. Anaya's heart skipped. The promise was coming. When the gates opened, the black car didn't belong in their lane. It stood out against the mud, walls and rusted doors, like a shadow from another world. Anaya froze, her hands still wet from washing dishes. Mira stepped closer, her shoulders instinctively straightening. The car door opened. A man in a simple suit stepped out, not Vikram Malhotra, but someone who carried his authority. Mira Devi. The man asked politely. Mira nodded, cautious. Yes. I'm Mr. Sharma. I work for Mr. Vikram Malhotra. Anaya felt her breath catch. We'd like to speak with you, Sharma continued. If you have a moment. Neighbors peeked from doorways, curiosity buzzing like electricity. Mira wiped her hands on her sari and gestured inside. The man entered the shack, his eyes taking in every detail without judgment. Mr. Malhotra wanted me to thank you again, he said, and to ask something. Mira folded her hands. Ask. He would like to take responsibility for Aarav's driver, and he would like to ensure your daughter's education. Anaya's head snapped up. Education. She repeated. Sharma nodded. Full schooling. Fees, books, uniforms. Silence filled the room. Mira's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. Why? Because, Sharma said simply, Mr. Malhotra believes kindness should be answered with opportunity. Anaya's heart pounded. This was more than money. This was a door she had never imagined opening. But there is no obligation, Sharma added quickly. No publicity. No expectations. Mira looked at Anaya. In her daughter's eyes, she saw fear and hope tangled together. Will Anaya have to work for him? Mira asked quietly. No, Sharma said firmly. She will only study. Mira exhaled, as if releasing years of burden. Then we accept. With gratitude. That night, Anaya couldn't sleep. She stared at the cracked ceiling, imagining classrooms, books that weren't borrowed, dreams that didn't end at survival. Days later, Anaya stood before towering iron gates. Beyond them rose a school so beautiful it looked unreal. Aarav waited inside, smiling nervously. You came, he said. So did you, Anaya replied. Their worlds collided again, not by chance this time, but by choice. And somewhere above them, Vikram Malhotra watched from a distance. Knowing the gates he had opened would change more than one life. Anaya had never seen classrooms like these. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, falling on polished desks and shelves filled with new books. The walls displayed colorful charts and framed achievements. Everything smelled of fresh paper and possibility. She clutched her bag tightly, afraid that if she loosened her grip, the moment might vanish. Aarav walked beside her, quieter than usual. It's strange, he admitted. I've been here for years, but today feels different. Anaya glanced at him. Why? Because now I'm not alone in it. That made her smile. In class, Anaya felt eyes on her, curious, cautious, some unkind. Her uniform fit awkwardly, still stiff and unfamiliar. When the teacher introduced her, whispers followed. But when the lesson began, something shifted. Numbers made sense. Words came alive. Anaya's hand rose with answers that surprised even herself. By the end of the day, the whispers had softened into respect. During lunch, Aarav offered her half his sandwich. "You helped me first," he said simply. Weeks passed. Anaya studied harder than she ever had. Every page felt precious. Every lesson felt like a promise she was determined to keep. Mira watched her daughter leave for school each morning with pride that hurt her chest. One afternoon, Anaya stayed late in the library. Vikram Malhotra happened to pass by. He paused when he saw her bent over a book, her brow furrowed in concentration. "She doesn't waste time," a teacher said quietly. Vikram nodded. "She knows what it costs." That evening, Aarav spoke up at dinner. "Dad, can Anaya come for my birthday?" Vikram hesitated. His world was full of cameras and expectations. But then he remembered a leaking roof, a warm towel, and a girl who had stayed awake so his son could sleep. "Yes," he said. "She can come." Anaya had never seen a birthday like that. Lights, laughter, food untouched by worry. Yet what mattered most was Aarav saving her a seat beside him. For the first time, Anaya felt she belonged somewhere new without losing who she was. And Vikram began to understand that true. Education wasn't just in schools, it was in humility. The birthday party ended, but its echo followed Anaya home. As she stepped back into the narrow lane that night, the contrast hit her hard. The silence, the darkness, the familiar smell of damp earth. The mansion's lights still shimmered in her mind like something borrowed. Not owned. Mira noticed it immediately. "You're quiet," she said, handing Anaya a plate of warm food. "It was beautiful," Anaya admitted. "Too beautiful." Mira sat beside her. "Remember," she said gently, "beauty doesn't mean it's yours to become. It's yours to learn from." Anaya nodded, though her chest felt heavy. At school, the distance between worlds became clearer. Some classmates were kind. Others weren't. "She's lucky," one girl whispered loudly. "Poor girl rescued by a billionaire." Anaya heard. She pretended not to. During group work, she was excluded. During sports, she was overlooked. Each moment stung, but she endured, remembering the night in the rain. Aarav noticed. "You don't have to prove anything," he said. Anaya looked at him. "I already am." One afternoon, a scholarship announcement was posted. Only one seat for a national science program. Competition buzzed instantly. Anaya stared at the notice, heart racing. This wasn't a gift. This was something she could earn. She studied late into the night, by the dim bulb, while Mira quietly stitched clothes for extra money. At the same time, Vikram faced murmurs in his world. "You're getting soft," a colleague remarked. "Charity is fine. Attachment is risky." Vikram said nothing. He had learned that night that some risks were worth taking. When the scholarship results were announced, the hall fell silent. "Anaya Mira Devi," the principal read aloud. Anaya's breath caught. Applause followed, some genuine, some forced. Aarav beamed. But outside the hall, a reporter's camera flashed. "Is this another Malhotra charity success story?" Anaya froze. That night, she cried quietly, torn between gratitude and dignity. She didn't know it yet, but the hardest test was just beginning. The headlines spread faster than the rain ever had. "Billionaire's kindness lifts slum girl to success." Anaya read it once. Then again. Each word felt heavier than the last. Her name wasn't mentioned for her effort, only for who stood behind her. At school, everything changed. Teachers praised her carefully. Classmates avoided her openly. Some smiled too wide, others whispered too sharply. "She didn't earn it," someone muttered. "Of course she won. Look who's helping her." Anaya's hand shook as she closed her book. At home, Mira tried to comfort her. "People fear what they don't understand." "But they think I'm nothing without him," Anaya whispered. That evening, Vikram Malhotra invited Anaya and Mira to his office. The room was glass and steel, cold compared to their warm shack. "I didn't want this," Vikram said, genuine regret in his eyes. The media crossed a line. Anaya gathered her courage. Sir, I don't want favors. I want fairness. Vikram studied her, really studied her. Then he nodded. Then we will do this your way. The next day, Vikram made a public announcement. There will be no special treatment, he said firmly. Anaya will compete on merit alone. Any support ends here. Gasps followed. Aarav looked at his father, confused. That night, Anaya returned home to find her school sponsorship cancelled. No car. No special access. Just her old routine. She cried, but she didn't quit. Days turned into weeks. Anaya walked farther. Studied harder. Failed sometimes. Aarav struggled too. For the first time, he saw how privilege had protected him. One rainy afternoon, almost. Like the first, Anaya stood outside the school gates. Soaked but unbroken. Vikram watched from afar, pride and pain mixed together. She was standing in the storm again. But this time, she stood alone, by choice. The notice board was crowded that morning. Students pressed forward, names overlapping. Voices rising and falling as ranks and results were scanned. Anaya stood at the back. Her heart beating so loudly she thought others might hear it. She told herself she didn't care. She told herself numbers no longer defined her. But her hands trembled anyway. Anaya. Someone called. She stepped forward slowly. There it was. Not at the top. Not buried at the bottom. Clear. Earned. Her name stood strong among the highest ranks. Second. For a moment, the world went silent. Then the clapping started. Not polite applause. Not forced admiration, but something warmer. Real. Anaya blinked hard, fighting tears. She had done this on her own. Across the hall, Aarav found her eyes and smiled, pride shining on his face. He clapped the loudest. Later that day, the principal called Anaya into the office. She waited nervously, fingers interlocked. We'd like you to represent the school at the state-level academic forum, the principal said. You earned it. Earned. The word wrapped around Anaya's heart like armor. That evening, she walked home slowly, savoring the ordinary sounds, the vendors, the children playing, the clatter of life continuing. Mira waited at the door, worry etched into her face. Anaya didn't speak. She simply held up the result paper. Mira read it once. Then again. She pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. I always knew, she whispered, tears falling freely now. That night, Anaya sat outside under the open sky. Books beside her, future-wide and uncertain. For the first time, uncertainty didn't scare her. Across the city, Vikram Malhotra received the results on his phone. He read them quietly, then set the phone down. No calls. No announcements. Just a deep, steady breath. She did it, he said softly to himself. Aarav leaned against the doorway. She didn't need us, he said. Vikram nodded. No, but we needed her. The next day, Anaya arrived at school as usual. No cameras waited. No whispers followed. Just normalcy. And that was the greatest reward. Because the girl who once stood freezing in the rain had learned something priceless. Kindness can open doors, but courage is what keeps them open. She walked forward, shoulders straight, heart steady. When paths cross again, life settled into a new rhythm. Anaya woke before sunrise, studied while the city yawned awake, and walked to school with a quiet confidence that surprised even her. People no longer pointed or whispered. They nodded. Sometimes they asked for help. She gave it without thinking. The state-level academic forum arrived sooner than she expected. The auditorium was vast, filled with students from elite schools. Confident voices, crisp uniforms. Anaya sat in the third row, hands folded tightly in her lap. For a flicker of a moment, doubt crept in. Do I belong here? She closed her eyes and remembered the rain, the cold, the fear. She remembered standing alone and choosing kindness anyway. The doubt faded. When her turn came, Anaya spoke clearly, about science, about problem solving, about access and opportunity. She didn't try to impress. She spoke from experience. The judges leaned forward. By the end of the day, her name echoed through the hall again. Not first, not last, but honored. Recognition. respect. Outside the auditorium, Aarav waited. You were amazing, he said, genuinely in awe. Anaya smiled. So were you. You listened. They laughed. Lighter now, equals at last. Weeks later, Vikram Malhotra invited Anaya and Meera for dinner, not at the mansion, but at a quiet restaurant by the river. No media. No formality. I owe you both an apology, Vikram said once they were seated. I thought money could fix gratitude. I was wrong. Meera smiled kindly. We all learn. Vikram turned to Anaya. You taught my son courage. And you taught me restraint. Anaya lowered her eyes. You gave me a chance. Vikram shook his head. No, you took it. As they parted, Vikram handed Anaya an envelope. She hesitated. Open it later, he said. Or don't. It's your choice. That night, under the dim bulb at home, Anaya opened it. Inside was a letter. No money, no promises. Just words. Your future belongs to you. Walk it without fear. Anaya folded the letter carefully and placed it beside her books. Outside, rain clouds gathered again, but this time she smiled, because she knew exactly how to stand in a storm.